we just happened to go to Toledo. We just happened to go to this exhibition. And because it was such a sort of abstruse subject, it was really very, very easy to find all manner of clues, having, as you might say, stumbled upon the fact that Leonardo was not an original thinker. I don't want to decry Leonardo in any way at all. I think he was a genius, but and a fantastic painter, and even more incredible illustrator. But his real skill was not inventing, which he didn't really invent anything as far as I can see, but in developing other people's ideas in a manner which the man in the street could understand. So when he, for example, came across pumps, which were rather crudely drawn by Di Giorgio and Taccola, he could refine them and make 3D drawings, which would be perfectly understandable today. So Leonardo was an absolute genius, and I'm not decrying that. And then when I dug deeper into Taccola, I realized that those people on our website who had said all the way along I'd been too simplistic about Chinese coming to Europe, they're absolutely dead right. And a Chinese-Canadian called Taiping Wang found records in both China and in Florence that a Chinese delegation had visited the Pope in 1434, who was that year he was in exile in Florence, and they brought a whole mass of information with them, including world maps. Now, this got me really interested because I have learned a bit about world maps, and there are all sorts of unfathomable questions that people should ask about world maps. For example, the Library of Congress owns a world map published in 1507 by a man called Waldseemüller, which shows the whole coast of the Americas from 45 degrees north, right up in the north, present Oregon, right down to the Straits of Magellan, as we now call them. In the Library of Congress, there is this map showing all that, which was published before Magellan found the Straits of Magellan, before Ferrelo and Cabrillo reached Oregon and could have described it, before Balboa discovered the Pacific, in inverted commas. So before all these brave inventors, brave explorers found the Americas, there were maps, accurate maps, showing the Americas. So clearly, the people who are credited with finding the Straits of Magellan, that is Magellan himself, is incorrect, because by the time he got down there, 12 years earlier, a map had been published showing the Straits. And I set out in this latest book, 1434, to find that map. And again, I was incredibly lucky. I was invited to give a speech at the biannual conference of geographers in France at a place called Saint-Dié-des-Vosges, in which I did. Well, that was Waldseemüller's hometown, the chap that produced this map. So I could get hold of all his notes with the blessing of the museum authorities. And I found that, in fact, he was able to produce his map because he'd received from the King of Portugal a world map. And I could then go back to the King of Portugal. How did he get it? He got it from Venice. And how did they get it from there? They got it through the Pope. And the Pope obtained his copies. He's given it by the Chinese. So to summarize a rather sort of lengthy explanation, I found out that the Chinese came to Florence via Venice, and they brought with them world maps and also all sorts of complex mathematical tables which enabled Chinese navigators to determine latitude and longitude. So they brought the world maps, and they brought the methods the Chinese had used for calculating the shape of the world from their discoveries. And that's all set out in the book, together with copies of the Chinese maps, world maps, which were presented to the Pope, who in his turn sent them to the King of Portugal and to Christopher Columbus. So Columbus essentially had a world map showing him the way to the Americas, which he actually acknowledged. He didn't actually claim to have discovered the Americas. Magellan had a map showing him the Straits of Magellan, and both Columbus and Magellan's maps were taken from the Chinese world map, which was presented to the Pope in 1434.
I feel like you are the combination Columbo and Inspector Clouseau and James Bond of revisionist history. Very distinguished and eloquent, but really, you got a tiger by the tail, don't you?
Well, you're very sweet to say that. I think what really has happened is the website has completely changed the historian's profession. And when 1421 was published, Transworld, who I think did a wonderful job on publishing that book, they said, look, you're going to get snowed under with emails, so set up a website and work out a way of coping with people who come and ask questions and so on. Well, we set up this website virtually the same time as 1421 was published. That's in 2002. And we've had, every day, we have approximately 2,000 people who come to the website with criticisms or agreements, and above all, with new ideas and new evidence. And I've invested my royalties in a team of young people who analyze what comes in, and they try and make sense of it all and then retransmit it. So we've got 13,500 friends on our website who continuously bring us new information.
That's extraordinary.
It is. It's just amazing. It's an incredible facility. We've got more friends on our website than Oxford or Cambridge universities have undergraduates. I mean, it is an incredible resource, and everything that we publish in the book has been gone over by friends of our website who've come along and said, there's a mistake here, or you've forgotten something, or here's more evidence. So everything just sort of keeps going. It's like a self-perpetuating machine.
Well, I think the key to it is that you're in love with learning, and you're open to seeing who came before and how these connections are made, and putting this together and staying in the verifying process as much as you can, and saying when you think something versus when you verified something. I think that helps.
Well, I wouldn't presume to know an awful lot, which is quite an advantage, because you come upon history with a fairly open mind if you accept you're not an expert, and I have accepted that from the start. So if somebody comes along and says, I've found evidence that people from the papacy have brought a secret document and shown it to King of Portugal or whatever, whereas 10, 15 years ago I'd have said, oh, for goodness sake, forget it. Now, virtually nothing that comes in do we discard straight away. So we try and cross-reference and analyze what comes in. But a most amazing flow of evidence comes in the whole time. So if I can take one example.
Please.
In the book 1434, I set out how first the Chinese and then the Europeans were able to calculate latitude without sextants and longitude without clock.
You went into great detail about that, astronomy and navigation, and I think you should talk about that.
Right. Well, essentially, in the book 1434, I refer to the mathematical tables which the Chinese brought to Florence in 1434. And I showed how they used those tables and the star tables and star charts to calculate longitude, and how their work was taken over by, first of all, a man called Regiomontanus, and then Copernicus and Galileo. So the mathematical tables were of great importance in enabling Renaissance mathematicians and astronomers to realize that the Earth was not the center of the universe, that the sun was, and the Earth was a planet amongst many, and circled the Earth. So I could show that Copernicus actually got his knowledge from the Chinese. Now, the reason I say that is that when that's all put in the book and then appears on the website, you get people who come along and say, well, hold on a moment. You say the Chinese could calculate latitude and longitude with these mathematical tables, but why don't you